16 gigabytes of memory. That is all it takes to run a 20 billion parameter AI model on your own computer free, with the internet switched off. So what happens the day you stop renting artificial intelligence and simply own it? The weights, the trained numbers that make a model, are just a file. You download it, nobody bills you, and nobody ever sees what you typed. And before anybody gets carried away, that free model is beaten, right now, by the one you rent. Researchers have measured exactly how far behind. Don't lose that thread. We're giving you the real figure today.
No account, no login. That's the part people miss.
Last time we asked whether this whole thing's a bubble. Today's the flip side of that coin, the part of it that costs nothing, because a lab already paid and handed the result out.
Right, and here's where I get lost, so let me just say it out loud. My read is that a model's a program, something a company runs on their computers and rents to me. You're telling me it's a file. What's actually in the file?
Numbers. Billions of them. Every fact, every pattern, every habit that model has lives as a giant grid of numbers called weights, and a lab can publish that grid the way you'd publish a photograph. Once the grid's on your drive, the model's on your drive. There's no phone home step, no license server, no monthly check-in. You point a small piece of software at the file and it starts answering.
One machine, yours. No middleman with a meter.
Assume the worst for a second though, because that's where the honest version lives. Ask a local model something genuinely hard. A nasty piece of reasoning, a long chain of steps, a tricky bit of law, and you'll feel the ceiling. It doesn't fail loudly. It fails confidently. That's the trade you're really making, and anybody selling you local artificial intelligence without saying that sentence is selling you something.
Okay, so the file's free, but the ceiling's real. Where is the line? Because that's the whole question for anybody watching.
Liam, you just asked the episode. Isabella, give them the sharper version of it.
Gladly, and in the exact words people use, because the phrasing is the point. If the good models are free to download, why is everyone still paying $20 a month? That's the smartest version of it. Coming up, the word open, which almost never means what you think. The measured gap between free and rented. A live terminal, 3 commands. And the part nobody warns you about. But first, that word.
Okay, I have to say it because I've watched 3 different people get burned by this exact word. Somebody hands you a model and calls it open source. It's usually not open source. It's open weights, and those aren't the same animal.
2 ways to hear that, and one is right. Take the guess. When a lab publishes an open model, do you get the training data and code with it, or only the finished dials?
Both, surely. Open means open. If I can see the model, I can see how it was made. That's what the word has meant my whole life in software.
Wrong on the second half. You get the dials, never the recipe.
Think of it like a piano that arrives already tuned. Every string is set exactly where somebody put it, and you can play anything you like on it, forever, for nothing. What you don't get is the tuning log. Which strings they touched, in what order, using what. You can't rebuild the instrument. You can only play the one you were handed.
Hang on. Safest only if the license actually lets you. Does it?
Sometimes yes, sometimes with a leash, and there's an actual definition that settles the vocabulary.
Open weights on the left. Trained weights, yes. No training data, no training code. Free to run and free to tune. That's the deal almost every open model actually offers, and the open source initiative says it isn't enough.
Their definition wants all 4. Trained weights, yes. Data information, the full training code, and the freedom to modify what you were given. Look at the second row because that's the one that does the work. It asks for sufficiently detailed information about the data used to train the system, so that a skilled person could build a substantially equivalent system. That's the sentence. Almost nobody clears it. So when a lab says open, they nearly always mean the weights, the dials, and the data and the recipe stay locked in the building.
Call it the dials, not the recipe rule. And Elena's piano breaks down right there because you can at least open a piano and see the strings. Nobody can open these weights and read them. Cheap move now. Read the license before you build anything on it.
And the licenses genuinely differ. Grace, you found the clause.
Take Marta, solo therapist, 2-room practice, about 40 active clients. She wants a model reading her session notes, and she can't legally upload a single line of them to anybody. So she downloads Meta's Llama, builds her whole workflow on it, and then a friend asks whether she ever read the license.
Wait. Her practice is 40 people. Why would a license care?
It doesn't care. That's the hinge. Llama's license says if your product has more than 700 million monthly active users, you must request a license from Meta, and Meta grants it at their sole discretion. Marta's fine. Marta was always fine. But that clause is why it isn't open source, and it's why a giant can't simply take it.
So the leash is aimed at the giants, not at Marta.
This time, when this breaks, it breaks for the person who built a business on a license they never read. And the licenses aren't all the same. Some of them have no leash at all.
OpenAI's own open model is the clean example. Apache 2.0. No copyleft, no patent trap, commercial use included. The company that sells you the subscription hands you a model with no strings on it.
Which is a genuinely strange thing for a company to do. Hold that one. We'll come back to why anyone gives away the thing they spent a fortune building, and the answer isn't generosity.
But none of that matters until the room answers the question everybody actually came here with. The free model's on your desk. Is it any good? One thing before the next part, and then we move right on. If any of this is clicking, tap that like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for the next one. It takes a second, it costs nothing, and it helps more than you would think. Here's what you lose if you get this wrong. Pick local when the work needs the frontier, and you ship a confident wrong answer and never know it. Pick the frontier when your data can't legally leave the building, and you've got a different problem. Elena says the ceiling is the story. Grace says the freedom is.
Cheap move now. Download it, run it, own it. No bill, no account, no company deciding tomorrow that your access costs triple.
And on an ordinary Tuesday, she's right, and I'll say that plainly. Summarize this document. Rewrite this email. Pull the dates out of these notes. A local model does that work all day, and you couldn't pick it out of a lineup. But my objection starts exactly where the work gets hard. Give it a long chain of reasoning, a genuinely adversarial problem, a question where the second step depends on getting the first one right, and it'll hand you a beautiful paragraph that's wrong in the middle. When this breaks, it doesn't break loudly.
Grace, that's her strongest card. Go straight at it. Is the free model actually worse, or does it just feel worse?
The way the labs measure, forget the benchmark. Start with the question. Worse at what? Better isn't a number, it's a job.
No. That's a dodge. Researchers have actually put a number on.
They have. And it isn't the number you think.
One at a time. Grace first, then Elena. One sentence each. Then source it. On the spot. Where does that number actually come from?
Honestly, ask cold. I'd have told you the open models were about a year behind. Check me on that, because I think I'm carrying an old number in my head.
We pulled the page. Epic AI ranks every model that ships, open and closed. on one index. Their words, since January of 2026, the most capable open-weight models have lagged frontier closed models by an average of 4 months.
4. Huh. That moved more than I thought. I was wrong. Take the year off the board.
There's the number I promised you up top, 4 months. A shadow, not a canyon. But it's always there, and it always falls the same direction. That holds for nearly every person watching. Nearly. One group it quietly punishes, and they're coming.
Then let me stress the shadow, because 4 months of lag isn't 4 months of harmless. An average hides the
Say that number again, slowly.
4 months. And the average hides the shape. No, hold on, I had that backwards. The average hides which 4 months, and that's the whole point. On the easy work, the gap is nothing, you can't even measure it. But on the hardest work, the long reasoning, the code that has to actually compile, the question where being confidently wrong costs you real money, that's where the entire 4 months is concentrated. So assume the worst. You'll meet the gap on precisely the day you needed the machine to be right.
Let me land that for everybody, because it's the line worth writing down. Local isn't a worse model. Local is a model 4 months behind, and the 4 months live in the hard part. Elena, does that change anything on your side of the table?
Which I grant. The reasoning gap is real. I'm not giving you the privacy point.
Nor should you. Here's one neither of you has touched. Your data is legally radioactive. Medical notes, a client's contracts. The frontier model is better and you still can't use it. So what does the ceiling matter?
Then it doesn't matter at all. The best model you're allowed to use beats the best model there is. I'll give you that one. It moves me on scope, not on capability.
That's the whole case. And it's a bigger group than people think.
The verdict is a bounded yes. Inside the boundary, ordinary work, your own data, your own machine, local is genuinely good enough. And Epoch's 4 months is what makes that safe to say. Outside it, the frontier still wins. Local fits the person whose data can't travel. The frontier fits the person whose hardest problem is genuinely hard. That's the call. And Epoch's page is the receipt behind it, which leaves one thing between you and your own line. Can you actually install this? Or is it 3 lost weekends and a broken laptop?
Okay, I have to confess something. I keep a notebook of questions I haven't answered. It's at 341 now. And how do I actually run one of these has been sitting in it unanswered for most of a year. Because I assumed it meant a lost weekend and a lot of swearing.
It's 3 commands. That's not a sales pitch. That's the honest count. But before anybody types anything, the machine has to be able to hold the thing you're about to download. And that's where most people fall over.
Memory is the bouncer. Whatever fits, runs. Whatever doesn't, crawls.
So look at the actual numbers, because they're published and they're not a mystery. OpenAI's GPT-OS comes in 2 sizes. The 20 billion one is about a 14 gigabyte download, and OpenAI's own page says quantization lets it run on a system with as little as 16 gigabytes of memory. That's a normal gaming machine. Today, no exotic hardware. But the 120 billion version is a 65 gigabyte download, and it wants a single 80 gigabyte professional card, which you don't have and neither do I. Google's Gemma 4 family sits underneath all of that. The small edge models run around 7 gigabytes, and the biggest is about 20. That's the whole ladder, and where you land on it is decided by one number inside your machine.
The file is a one-time download then, downloaded once, yours forever. But you said quantization. What is that in one sentence for a person who's never heard the word?
Fewer bits per number. Smaller file, slightly dumber model. Too big for your memory and it crawls.
But get it right, and the thing answers with the cable pulled out. which leaves the one question underneath every hardware thread on the internet.
And I'll put it exactly as people ask it. What can my computer actually run, and how do I know before I download 65 gigabytes? Let's get somebody on the line who lives in this.
People say my computer can run AI as though a computer were one thing. Your processor decides whether it starts. Your memory decides whether it finishes.
So how does somebody at home know which side of that line they're on, without buying anything?
Take the download size and add a little headroom. If that fits inside your graphics card's memory, you get a fast, comfortable answer. If it doesn't, the model spills into ordinary system memory and slows to a crawl. It still works, it just stops being fun. Usually, that's the entire story.
And if somebody wants the very best local model money can buy,
Start with the small one anyway, run it for a week. Find out whether the ceiling actually touches your work before you spend anything. Most people discover it doesn't. The optimization side I know cold. Whether a particular card is worth its price this month is a different animal, and I'd want somebody who watches that market weekly to tell you.
That's the piece we were missing. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure. And one last thing, because everybody forgets it. The smallest model you'll actually use every day beats the biggest one you'll admire once and never open again. Start small. Good luck.
Then let's stop describing it. Liam, you've waited a year. Open a terminal.
right, nothing installed, blank machine, what's line 1?
That's the installer, and it's the same single line on a Mac or on Linux. On Windows, you run the PowerShell equivalent instead, IRM, the same address ending in install.ps1, piped into IEX. Nothing else. Now ask it for a model.
7.6 gigabytes. Once. It never downloads again.
So that file is now just mine. It's sitting on the drive like a photograph, and the third command runs it.
That prompt is the model. It's loaded, it's waiting, and nothing you type from here reaches the internet. Now wipe the screen and do the same thing with the 20 billion model. The one OpenAI published, the 14 gigabyte download that wants 16 gigabytes of memory. And watch the command take exactly the same shape.
It just answered my question about itself. Mitzi cable out.
3 commands. 14 gigabytes. $0 forever. $0 forever. Which is exactly the sentence that should make you suspicious.
It should. Nobody spends a fortune training a model and then posts it for free out of kindness. So assume the worst. If a thing is free and enormous, somebody's being paid somewhere else in the sentence, and you just haven't found where yet.
And the answer's on the record. Mark Zuckerberg wrote it in his own open letter. A key difference between Meta and closed model providers, he said, is that selling access to artificial intelligence models is not Meta's business model. He isn't saying the model's worthless. He's saying he doesn't sell it.
2 moves ahead. If your rival's whole business is charging for the model, you make the model free. You don't have to beat him. You only have to make the thing he sells worth nothing.
So the free model's a weapon aimed at somebody else's price list. And I benefit by accident.
You benefit by accident. Yes. It's the oldest move there is. Give away the thing beside the thing you sell until nobody can charge for it. That's the consequence. You're holding a free model built for a war you're not even in.
And it isn't only an American move anymore. 2 of the biggest open-weight labs sit in one Chinese city.
Hangzhou, Alibaba's campus. That's where Quinn comes from. And DeepSeek sits in the same city.
Which is a whole episode of its own, and we won't do it justice in a sentence, so I'm leaving it exactly there.
Then the only thing left is the part that decides your evening. I'm learning to weld right now, badly, and here's what nobody tells you. The welder isn't the hard part. Knowing which joint actually needs welding is the hard part. Same here. Everyone argues about which model. Almost nobody asks the only question that matters. What's your data, and can it legally leave the room?
So here's what I'd actually do, and it's unfashionable, because both halves are true and neither is exciting. Run it locally if your data can't leave the room. The therapist, the lawyer, the doctor, the person with an unpublished manuscript.
Or if you work somewhere with no signal. Or if you'd rather your cost was a one-time number than a subscription that grows. Or, honestly, if you want to understand the machine instead of renting it, which is the reason I'm doing it.
And don't bother if you just want the best answer.
Say the rest of it, because that's the part people skip.
If your hardest problem is genuinely hard, you're standing in the 4-month shadow, and no amount of tinkering walks you out of it. Pay the $20. That isn't a betrayal, it's arithmetic.
Elena, care to guess how many of my 341 questions were secretly this one?
All of them. You've been asking one question in 341 costumes.
And the notebook's winning.
It is fine. Then here's tonight. And to borrow Grace's word, the dial's not the recipe rule. I'm downloading the dials, running the small one for a week, and finding out whether the ceiling ever touches anything I actually do.
Not a side, a week. And if you know a nurse, a paralegal, a writer with a first draft, somebody whose work is full of things they can never paste into a chatbot, send them this. Walk away with this. The model isn't a service you rent anymore. It's a file you can own. And the only question left is whether your hardest task lives inside the 4-month shadow or nowhere near it.
Winnable.
Give me the one line each of you would put on a sticky note. Go.
Open weights, not open source. You get the dials, never the recipe.
4 months behind, and the 4 months live in the hard part.
That's the episode. Free model, 16 gigabytes of memory, a license you actually have to read, and a ceiling far lower than the fear.
And the thing you keep is the one nobody can take back, the files on your drive. Whatever happens to prices, accounts, or terms of service next year, the model you download tonight still answers you next year, offline for nothing.
Next time we go to Hangzhou, the lab that open-weighted a frontier-class model and knocked a historic hole in the stock market on a Monday morning. The engineering's stranger than the headline ever was.
Tonight's move, open your machine's system information and find the number beside graphics memory. That single number tells you which row of today's table you're standing on before you download a thing.
If this series is what finally makes the machine make sense, subscribe and hit like. That's what tells us to keep building it. And the one only you can answer. What's the one thing on your computer you'd never ever paste into a chatbot? This is Isabella. Thanks for watching and signing off.